Not every pain begins with tears. Not every loneliness cries out for help. Some sadnesses begin very quietly. So quietly that if you are not genuinely looking, you will walk past them the way you walk past an empty bench in a winter park, without turning back, without wondering, and without ever knowing that a human being once sat there, trying to breathe through one more day. That night was Christmas Eve. New York wore its familiar brilliance, streets flooded with lights, holiday music spilling out from storefronts, families wrapped in thick scarves, hand in hand, their breath fading white into the cold air. Everything reminded people of one thing: this was a time to be together. But inside the grand lobby of the Lawson Group headquarters, where marble pillars rose high, where expensive suits glided across polished floors, where champagne was poured without hesitation, a man walked in whom almost no one noticed. His name was Michael Reed, 38 years old, a night shift maintenance worker. His gray work shirt had faded from too many washes. His old shoes were darkened by grease and melting snow. His calloused hands still carried the scent of metal and dust from the ventilation system he had repaired earlier that afternoon. Michael walked slowly, as if afraid to disturb the place's elegance. He did not belong here. At least, that was what people saw. They saw a janitor. They did not see an artist. Beside him was Lily, his 7-year-old daughter. She held her father's hand tightly, her bright brown eyes shining with excitement. Her curly hair swayed gently as she spotted the enormous Christmas tree near the VIP elevators, glowing with golden lights. "Daddy, look!" Lily's voice was soft but full of wonder. Michael bent down and smiled. It was not a broad smile, not a showy one, but it carried a kind of love that makes the chest ache, a love both tender and heavy with responsibility. He loved his daughter in the way of men who have already lost too much, with protection, with unspoken sacrifices, and with the quiet guilt that he could not give her a childhood as complete as those of other children. No glamorous dresses, no expensive private schools. Only an old rented apartment in Brooklyn where the heater rattled through winter nights, and an old piano at the community center where Lily would sometimes hear her father play when he thought no one was listening. Above them, on the mezzanine overlooking the entire lobby, stood Emma Lawson, 35 years old, CEO and chairwoman of the group. She stood straight-backed, her gaze calm, accustomed to observing and controlling everything below. The red dress she wore did not need to be flashy, yet it was enough to draw attention. People often described Emma Lawson with words like cold, decisive, unforgiving. Few spoke of her emotions, and no one knew that beneath that armor of power lay a wound that had never healed. 17 years earlier, when she still believed in simple things, Emma had loved a young man named Daniel Brooks, a piano prodigy whose eyes always lit up when his fingers touched the keys. He once wrote her a song. Only she ever heard it. A melody with no sheet music, no notes written down, known to no one else. 3 weeks later, Daniel died in a car accident. That song, Emma believed, died with him. She learned to turn music into meaningless background noise. She learned not to feel too deeply, because feeling meant pain. And then, in a corner of the lobby, an antique Steinway piano, meant only for decoration, stood with its lid open. Michael stopped. Lily gently tugged at his hand. "Daddy, can you play something for me? Just one song? So I can fall asleep?" Michael looked at his daughter, then at the piano. He did not know that in just a few minutes, a melody about to be played would bring the entire room to silence, and that, on that Christmas night, it would not only awaken a song, but also awaken a truth buried for nearly 2 decades. The music had not begun yet. The piano remained silent in the corner of the lobby as if it were waiting for something. Michael bent down to straighten Lily's coat. She had started to yawn, her eyelids drooping after a long day. Her eyes, however, still sparkled as she looked toward the dessert station, where a chocolate fountain flowed slowly, dark and glossy beneath the lights. "Daddy, I want a strawberry." Lily's voice was small, but filled with hope. Michael hesitated for a second. He knew those looks all too well, the familiar glances he had learned to recognize over years of working here. Quick, passing, and never truly seeing him. "All right," he said softly, "but be careful." Lily let go of her father's hand and ran toward the dessert table with the eagerness of a 7-year-old. Michael stayed behind, his eyes never leaving her for even a moment. And then, it happened in an instant. A splash of champagne someone had accidentally spilt onto the marble floor, not yet wiped dry. Lily's small foot slipped. Her body lost balance. The sound of impact was not loud, just a dry, dull knock. But it was enough to make time freeze. Lily fell. Her knee struck the floor hard. A brief silence. Then her face tightened, her lips trembled before the cry broke free. Michael was at her side before anyone else could react. He dropped to his knees, wrapped his arms around Lily, and pulled her into his chest. A clean handkerchief came out of his jacket pocket. He always carried one because moments like this were not uncommon in the life of a single father. "It's okay. Daddy's here," he whispered. His voice was low, steady, solid like an anchor. Blood began to soak through the thin fabric of her stocking. Michael gently pressed the handkerchief against her knee, his other hand stroking the curly hair trembling from pain and fear. Lily's crying softened, fading into quiet sobs. She buried her face into her father's chest as if it were the only safe place left in the world. A few heads turned, a few whispers followed, and then a voice cut through the moment, sharp, cold, and utterly impatient. "Can't you control your child?" Michael looked up. Standing in front of him was Richard Cole, a perfectly tailored navy suit, polished leather shoes without a single scratch. A magazine, handsome face, paired with a smile that never reached his eyes. Richard glanced down at the small streak of blood on the floor as if it were an unpleasant stain. "This is a leadership event," he said, "not a daycare." Michael clenched his jaw, but his voice remained calm. "She slipped. It was just an accident." "An accident," Richard sneered. "Accidents don't happen when people know their place." His gaze flicked over Michael's maintenance uniform, contempt undisguised. "There are separate entrances for staff. That's why they exist." Lily heard him. Her small lips trembled, her hands tightening around her father's shirt. Something cracked inside Michael's chest. He opened his mouth. But before he could speak, another voice rang out. "That's enough." The entire lobby fell silent. From the mezzanine staircase, Emma Lawson descended. Each step was slow, deliberate. No rush, no hesitation. When she reached them, her blue eyes locked onto Richard, cold enough to frost glass. "You have no right to speak to my employee that way." Richard turned toward her, visibly startled. "Emma, I was just—" "Apologize," she cut him off. Her voice was not loud, not harsh, but it allowed no resistance. "Apologize. Now." The room held its breath. Richard's face flushed. He glanced around, then lowered his head, his voice clipped. "I'm sorry." No one was certain to whom the apology was meant, perhaps for himself. Emma turned to Michael. In that moment, her expression softened. She noticed the way he held his daughter, the way he shielded Lily from the curious stares. An instinctive kind of protection, strong, quiet, and strangely familiar. "Take your daughter to the medical room," she said more gently. "Private elevator, 5th floor." Michael nodded. He said nothing. His throat was too tight to form a thank you. He lifted Lily into his arms and left the lobby, leaving behind a room that had just witnessed something rarer than power itself. Respect. And in the corner, the piano remained silent. But it seemed to be waiting for the right person to sit down. When Michael and Lily returned to the lobby, the party had grown louder than before. Laughter rose in clusters. Champagne glasses clinked together. Someone had opened the lid of the antique Steinway piano, the one that usually sat silent in the corner, beautiful but useless, more a symbol than a real instrument. A man in a rumpled suit was sitting at the piano. He tapped out a few simple chords, repeating them over and over, laughing loudly as he played. People applauded out of politeness rather than for the music itself. Michael stopped a few steps away. Lily, her knee now neatly bandaged, held a cup of hot chocolate given to her by a kind assistant. She took a small sip, then looked up at her father. "Daddy." Her voice was sleepy now, soft like cotton. "Can you play something for me? Just one song. Then we can go home." Michael looked at her. Under the lobby's warm golden lights, Lily's face carried a look at once tired and full of absolute trust. The kind of trust only children have, that the adults in front of them always have answers, always know what to do. He hesitated. How long had it been since he had sat in front of a real piano? Not in the empty room of a community center, not late at night when no one was listening. In front of him now were curious eyes, expensive suits, a world that had once turned its back on him. An old memory brushed against him, an accident, a hand burning with pain, a doctor's voice saying, "You won't be able to play professionally anymore." Some fears never disappear. They learn how to sleep. "I'm not sure," Michael said softly. Lily tightened her grip on his hand. "I like listening to you play." Just 4 words, but enough. Michael exhaled slowly. He set Lily's cup of hot chocolate down on a nearby table, pulled the chair back, and sat at the piano. The conversations around the lobby gradually softened. No one ordered silence, but there was something in the way this man placed his hands on the keys that caught the eye. Michael rested both hands on the keyboard. His right hand, with faint scars running along the wrist, trembled for a brief moment. He closed his eyes. Then he played. The first notes were very soft, not showy, no dramatic opening. Just a melody as gentle as rain touching a window at midnight. The sound did not try to impress, it was simply real. Each note was placed with care, as if every key carried its own memory. The music slowly spread through the lobby, weaving between conversations, dissolving them. People began to turn. Champagne glasses lowered. Laughter faded. The melody grew, not in volume, but in feeling. There was something in this music that caught in the listener's throat. It spoke of things never said, of losses that never heal, of a love deep enough to accept standing in the shadows. Michael played from memory, from years gone by, from the very part of himself he thought he had lost. Above, on the mezzanine, Emma Lawson was preparing to leave. She had taken her coat. She had told the driver to be ready. Then she heard the music. Her steps slowed. One note, then another. She gripped the brass railing tightly. Impossible. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Her breath caught as if the air in her lungs had suddenly grown too heavy. This melody, She had heard it before. Under a star-filled sky, beside a young man with bright eyes and a gentle smile. Northern Lights. The song she believed had disappeared forever. But no, it wasn't gone. It was here, alive, intact down to every pause. Emma felt her eyes burn. She could not remember the last time she had cried, but now memories shattered like thin glass. She walked down the stairs, no longer aware of the eyes around her. The music pulled her forward like an invisible thread. When the piece ended, the entire lobby stood frozen in a long silence. Then applause broke out, slow, steady, sincere. Michael opened his eyes and saw Emma Lawson standing just a few steps away. Her face had gone pale. Her blue eyes were filled with tears. "Where did you learn that song?" Her voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. Michael stood up slowly. His heart was racing. He knew this moment would come sooner or later. "It's just an old melody," he said. Emma shook her head. "No, that song was written for me. The man who wrote it died 17 years ago. No one else knew it." She looked straight at him. "Who are you?" Before Michael could answer, Lily stepped up beside him and rested her head against her father's hand. "You played beautifully," she said sleepily. "Can we go home now?" Michael bent down and lifted his daughter into his arms. Emma stepped back. As the two of them walked away, the melody continued to echo in her mind, no longer just a song, but a question without an answer. And Emma Lawson knew this Christmas night, it was not over yet. That night, Emma Lawson did not sleep. The penthouse apartment high above the city, once a place she believed to be absolutely safe, suddenly felt cramped. Below her, New York continued to move endlessly, the distant echo of traffic, unfamiliar lights casting reflections through the tall glass windows. But all of it only sharpened the silence inside her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, the melody returned. Not a fragment, not a few scattered notes, but the entire song. Every pause, every transition, every crescendo held back, then released at precisely the right moment. Exactly like that summer night 17 years earlier, when Daniel sat at the old wooden piano, playing for her beneath a sky full of stars. Emma sat up and took a deep breath. Impossible. It couldn't be that precise. That song had never been recorded, no sheet music, no audio. No one else besides her and Daniel had ever heard it. And yet the man from last night, a maintenance worker, had played it as if he had lived with it his entire life. Emma walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass. She suddenly became aware of an extraordinary feeling. Not fear, but anticipation. Anticipation for an answer. The next morning, Emma arrived at the office nearly 2 hours earlier than usual. She didn't drink coffee. She didn't check her email. She opened the human resources system and typed in a name. Michael Reed. The file that appeared was surprisingly bare. 3 years as a maintenance worker, no college degree. Before that, short-term jobs, warehouse, supermarket, loading docks. Marital status, widower. Emergency contact, Lily Reed, daughter, 7 years old. Nothing. Absolutely nothing related to music. Emma leaned back in her chair. Some people are filled with achievements from one page to the next, and some people seem to have been erased by life itself. She picked up the phone. "Linda," she said to her assistant, her voice calm but firm, "find Professor Alan Moore for me. He used to teach at Northfield Conservatory of Music. I need to see him today." There was a brief pause. "Yes," I'll arrange it." That afternoon, Alan Moore appeared in Emma's office. He was in his mid-50s, with graying hair and thin-framed glasses. His slender build was that of a man who had devoted his life to music rather than power. When he saw Emma, he smiled, a smile weighted with memory. "It's been a long time," he said. Emma nodded. "Too long." She opened her laptop and placed it on the desk. A short video clip, secretly recorded on a phone during the party the night before. The music filled the quiet room. Alan Moore said nothing. He sat perfectly still, his hands clasped together. When the video ended, he removed his glasses and closed his eyes for a moment. "That is Northern Lights," he said slowly. "But not the version people think." Emma felt her heart begin to race. "What do you mean?" Alan exhaled. "Daniel only wrote the opening, the first 8 measures. He was incredibly gifted, but he was stuck. He didn't know how to continue." Emma froze. "But Daniel told me—" "Daniel didn't lie," Alan interrupted gently. "He simply didn't tell the whole truth." He hesitated, then continued. "That summer, there was another student, quiet, exceptionally talented, but no one paid attention to him. Daniel asked him to help complete the piece. The air in the room seemed to thicken." "Who was he?" Emma asked. Alan shook his head. "It's been too long. He never sought credit. After Daniel died, he disappeared." Emma stared at the laptop screen where the piano lights illuminated Michael Reed's face. "Do you think it could be him?" she asked. Alan followed her gaze. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I have never heard anyone play that piece like this." The words hung in the air like an unspoken admission. Emma nodded. "Thank you." That very afternoon, Emma ordered that Michael Reed be located, but his shift was empty. The next day was the same. Security was sent to the address in his file, an old building in Brooklyn. The apartment was empty. The landlord said, "They moved out 3 days ago, paid in full, left no forwarding address." Emma stood still. A strange feeling tightened in her chest, not anger, but fear. She had frightened him. She had driven him to run. That night, snow began to fall. New York sank into a rare quiet. Emma was still at the office late into the night. She was about to leave when she stopped. A faint sound drifted up from the lobby below. Piano. Unmistakable. She rushed down the stairs, her heart pounding, and there, under the dim lights, Michael Reed sat at the piano, head bowed, playing Northern Lights. But this time, the song was sadder, like a farewell. The music stopped. The silence after the final note stretched longer than any melody that had come before it. The vast lobby sank into stillness, broken only by the soft sound of snow falling beyond the tall glass windows. Michael remained seated at the piano. His back was slightly hunched, as if the full weight of memory had just been placed back where it belonged. He did not turn around. He didn't need to. He already knew Emma Lawson was standing behind him. "You came back." Emma's voice was quiet but clear. Michael gave a slight nod, his hands still resting on the keys. "Lily asked why we left," he said slowly. "I didn't know how to explain it to her. She likes this place, likes the lights, likes the hot chocolate." He paused, and I realized, I can't keep running. Emma stepped closer but kept a careful distance. She didn't want to frighten him again. "I didn't come to force you," she said. "I just need to understand." Michael let out a soft laugh, a laugh without any joy. "Understand?" He turned around, meeting her eyes directly for the first time at such close range. Under the lobby lights, Emma could see the strands of silver mixed into his light brown hair, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, marks left by sleepless nights and years of quiet worry. "You want to understand the song," he said. "Or do you want to understand me?" Emma swallowed. "Both." Michael stood up. He stood straight, but not in defiance, just a tired man who had decided not to hide anymore. "Yes," he said. "It was me." Emma felt her knees weaken. "I was the one who completed Northern Lights," Michael continued, his voice steady but low. "Daniel wrote the beginning. He was brilliant, but he was stuck. He couldn't find the ending." Emma reached out, gripping the edge of the piano. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that? And let him take all the credit?" Michael looked down at his hands. "Because he loved you," he said. "And I did too." The words were not loud, not dramatic, but they struck Emma's chest with surgical precision. "Who was I?" Michael went on. "Just a poor student on a scholarship at the summer program. Music by day, washing dishes at night to afford bus fare." He looked up, his calm painfully honest. "And you? You were light. You were the one who made Daniel shine even brighter. I looked at the two of you and thought, that's love. And I wanted you to have it." "So you wrote a song for someone else to give to me?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "I wrote a song for you," Michael corrected gently. "Daniel was just the one who played it." He took a deep breath. "He once said he would tell you the truth, but I stopped him. I said, you deserved someone like him, not someone invisible like me." Tears slid down Emma's face. There were no sobs, just quiet, delayed tears. "Then Daniel died," she said. "And I lived with that song as if it were the last piece of him." Michael nodded. "And I let it be his legacy," he said, "because it helped you keep living." Silence settled between them, not heavy but filled with everything that should have been said long ago. "What happened to you?" Emma asked finally. "With your talent? Why this life?" Michael raised his right hand. The scars were clearly visible. 3 years after that summer, I signed a performance contract with your father's company," he said. "A stage accident, faulty equipment. They called it an occupational risk." Emma went pale. 3 surgeries, Michael continued, and 1 sentence. You'll never be able to play professionally again. He smiled, not bitterly, just tired. "So I learned to fix broken things. Pipes, light bulbs, air conditioners. Things that don't hurt when they break." Emma closed her eyes. "Did you know who I was when you came to work here?" she asked. "Not at first," Michael replied. "But then I saw your name. And then I saw you." He looked straight at her. "I stayed because I was a coward. Because seeing you from afar was still better than not seeing you at all." Emma stepped closer. "Michael," she said slowly, "you are not invisible." He looked at her, surprise and fear flickering in his eyes. "I don't know where this will lead," Emma continued, "but I do know one thing. I don't want to let this truth die again." From the corner of the lobby, Lily emerged, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Daddy?" she whispered. Michael turned and lifted his daughter into his arms. Emma watched the two of them, and in that moment, she understood. Some loves don't need grand promises. They only need to be seen. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and for the first time in 17 years, that song was no longer a secret. The large glass doors of the lobby burst open. Footsteps echoed, firm, cold, the kind of sound familiar to those accustomed to giving orders rather than listening. Richard Cole entered first. His face was tight, jaw clenched, eyes unable to hide the anger boiling beneath the surface. Behind him came two men in black suits, and finally the man who seemed to lower the temperature of the entire room simply by being there. Thomas Lawson, Emma's father. He didn't need to say a word to assert his authority. The way he stood, the way his gaze swept across the lobby, the way he looked at Michael, as if at an inconvenient obstruction. "So it's true," Thomas said, his voice low and sharp as a blade. "My daughter has stirred up the entire building over a maintenance worker." Emma stepped forward instinctively, placing herself between her father and Michael. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Richard let out a dry laugh. "I'm here to save you from a grave mistake," he said, "and to remind you that we're getting married 6 weeks from now. A major deal is waiting." Michael remained still. He said nothing. His fists tightened, but they did not tremble. "A deal?" Emma repeated, her voice calm to the point of cold. "You call marriage a deal?" Richard shrugged. "We both know what it is. This merger will create an empire. But if the press finds out you're involved with—" his eyes flicked toward Michael, "a low-level employee, everything collapses." Thomas gave a slight nod as if the logic were self-evident. "You were taught that emotions are a luxury," he said, "and luxuries have no place in business." Emma gave a soft laugh, short, joyless. "You taught me that power matters more than people," she replied. "And tonight, I no longer believe that." Thomas frowned. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," Emma said. "I'm doing the right thing." Richard stepped closer, his voice sharp with irritation. "You're throwing everything away for a pathetic story? An old accident? A song?" Emma turned to him, her gaze icy. "No," she said. "For the truth." She looked at Michael, then back to her father. "The accident back then," Emma said slowly, each word deliberate, "was not an occupational risk. It was your company that cut safety standards, faulty equipment, a cost-saving decision." Thomas waved a hand dismissively. "That's business." "That's destroying a human being," Emma replied, her voice shaking for the first time. "You took away his career. Then I paid enough to silence it. You call that justice?" Thomas looked at Michael with open contempt. "If he truly had talent," he said, "one accident wouldn't have ended him like this. The weak always look for excuses." The words landed in the lobby like a slap. Lily, sleeping on a leather chair wrapped in her father's coat, shifted. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. "Daddy, why is everyone yelling?" Her voice was small, out of place in the charged air. Michael bent down, lifted her into his arms, shielding her with his body. Emma watched the scene, and in that moment the last trace of hesitation dissolved. "That's enough," she said. The entire lobby fell silent. "This marriage," Emma turned to Richard, "ends here." Richard froze. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," Emma cut in. "My lawyer will send a formal notice tomorrow morning." Richard's face drained of color, then twisted with anger. "I have documents," he snarled. "Deals of yours aren't as clean as you think. I'll bury you." Emma didn't step back. "Go ahead," she said. but do it from the outside. You are no longer welcome in this building." She motioned to security. Richard was escorted out, his protests echoing across the cold marble floor. Thomas remained standing. His expression was not angry, but disappointed. "You're destroying everything I built," he said. Emma met her father's gaze. Her voice lowered. "No," she replied. "I'm rebuilding it. On the foundation you abandoned. Humanity." Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he turned away. "You'll regret this," he said, without looking back. The doors closed. The vast lobby became strangely quiet. Emma turned to Michael. She exhaled deeply as if stepping out of an invisible cage. "I don't know what tomorrow will look like," she said. "But tonight, I don't want to run anymore." Michael looked at her. His eyes no longer avoided hers. "Whatever comes of this," he said slowly, "thank you for choosing the truth." Emma nodded, and in that moment, there was no CEO, no maintenance worker. Only two people had dared to pay the price to live honestly as themselves. Outside, the snow continued to fall. But inside that grand lobby, a very long winter had begun to thaw. In the days that followed, New York did not grow any more peaceful. The city remained loud, rushed, indifferent, just as it had always been. But for Emma Lawson, everything had changed in a way that could not be undone. The press began to call her name, not with the familiar titles, brilliant young CEO or perfect successor, but with hesitant, probing headlines. Female CEO calls off engagement at the last minute. Questionable relationship with a low-level employee. Emotional decision or strategic miscalculation. Emma read them all, not out of curiosity, but because she wanted to face them. Each article was like a small needle pressing into her deepest fear. Was she firm enough to stand without the walls of power protecting her? Meanwhile, Michael Reed disappeared from public view. He did not speak to the press, he did not appear, he did not defend himself. He took Lily back to their small apartment in Brooklyn where everything was worn but familiar. In the evenings, he cooked dinner, helped her with homework, told her simple stories, as if all the upheaval outside did not exist. But inside Michael, the waves never settled. He knew well, Emma's choices had cost her, and a part of him, the part that had learned to live quietly, feared that he himself was the reason. One night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Michael sat alone in front of the old piano in the building's standard room. The piano was imperfect. Some keys were uneven. The sound was not full, but it was real. Michael placed his hands on the keys, then stopped. There are moments in life when people are not afraid of failure. They are so scared of hope returning because hope once hurt them. He remembered the doctor's words years ago, the pity in people's eyes, the feeling of standing at the edge while the world kept moving forward. And then he heard Lily's laughter drifting from the bedroom, a carefree laugh, unaware of fame, unaware of loss. Michael began to play. Not Northern Lights, not the song of memory, but a new melody, unfinished, clumsy, yet honest. Elsewhere in the city, Emma Lawson was also learning how to slow down. For the first time in years, she did not work past midnight. She brewed her own tea, sat by the window, listened to the city. Some nights she asked herself, "Did I do the right thing?" But whenever that question arose, the image of Michael holding Lily in the grand lobby returned to her mind. An image that could not be fabricated. A few weeks later, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was heavy. Some members worried about the company's image. Others were more blunt. They feared losing money. Emma stood before them, no longer trying to appear as unyielding as before. "I'm not asking for agreement based on emotion," she said. "I'm asking for it based on truth." She presented the old accident files, the safety cuts, the quiet settlements. "We cannot build the future by burying the past," Emma concluded. "If this costs me my position, I accept that." The room fell silent. Then one person spoke, then another. In the end, the majority stood with her. Thomas Lawson was forced to step down from his advisory role. The power he once held dissolved quietly. Emma did not feel victorious. She only felt lighter. Around the same time, a video began to circulate. Not a scandal, not a controversy. It was the clip of Michael playing piano on Christmas night, a fully edited, clear recording. Beneath it, thousands of comments appeared. "This music is real. Why have we never heard of him before? There are talents forgotten simply because they don't belong to the right place." Michael did not watch it, not until Lily held the phone up in front of him. "Daddy," she said, "they say you play beautifully." Michael looked at the screen, then at his daughter. In that moment, he understood. He no longer needed to hide. One afternoon, Emma stood at the door of the community center in Brooklyn. Michael opened it. No accusations, no long explanations, just two people standing in front of each other, no longer playing roles. "I don't know where this will lead," Emma said, "but I know. I don't want to keep walking without the truth." Michael nodded. "We can go slowly," he said. "But this time, we don't need silence anymore." The late afternoon sunlight spilt into the small room where the piano had once been forgotten, and there a new chapter began. Winter quietly began to retreat from New York. The snow melted into thin streams along the sidewalks. Bare branches pushed out new buds as if the city itself were learning how to breathe again after a long, heavy season. For Michael Reed, that change did not arrive through news reports or bold headlines. It came through mornings that felt more ordinary. He walked Lily to school, sat on the old wooden bench waiting for her to be dismissed. In the afternoons, he returned to the community center, home to the worn piano with its faded keys and imperfect sound. But now, that room was no longer silent. Children began to come more often, some shy, some restless, some who had never touched a piano before. Michael did not teach them how to become artists. He taught them how to listen. "Music doesn't start with the keys," he told them. "It starts where you dare to try." Lily sat beside her father during every lesson. She didn't play well, but she laughed loudly every time she hit the wrong note. Michael watched her, and for the first time in many years, he played not to remember, but to live. Across the city, Emma Lawson was also rebuilding her life, piece by careful piece. She no longer appeared on magazine covers, no longer spoke in front of hundreds of people, but every decision she made now was slower and more accurate. Emma founded a scholarship fund called Northern Lights. No grand announcements, no glamorous galas, just quiet support for children with talent but no means. Children like Michael had once been. She didn't tell her story. She let the music speak. One early spring afternoon, Emma came to the community center. No press, no assistants. She stood at the back of the room, silently listening as Michael taught. He didn't see her at first. He was bent down, gently adjusting a young boy's hands, his voice patient. "Slow down. Don't rush. You don't have to prove anything." Emma realized she was smiling. When the lesson ended, Lily ran over and hugged her. "Auntie Emma!" Her voice was clear and bright. Emma knelt and hugged the little girl back, an awkward but sincere hug. That evening, Michael and Emma sat together by the piano, not to talk about the past, not to define what they were to each other, to play. Michael placed his hands on the keys. Emma sat beside him, silent. The music that emerged was unfinished. There were stops, there were long pauses. But within those pauses, they both learned how to be together without needing to fill the space. A few months later, Whitmore Hall, the city's grand concert hall, was lit up. Not for a commercial performance, but for a fundraising concert for community arts education. The hall was packed. Michael stood backstage, his hands trembling slightly. He wasn't wearing a maintenance uniform, just a simple black suit. Lily stood beside him, holding her father's hand tightly. "Are you nervous, Daddy?" she asked. Michael smiled. "A little." "Me too," Lily said, "but I feel happy." Emma stood nearby, in a red dress, no longer armor, but presence. She looked at Michael, said nothing, just nodded. When Michael stepped onto the stage, applause rose, not explosive, but deep and sustained. He sat down at the grand piano. Lily sat beside him. Michael began to play Northern Lights, but this time, the song had a new ending. No longer only memory, no longer only loss. The music opened outward like a path. Speaking of hope, of late beginnings, of choosing to stay when everything once told you to leave. When the final note faded, the audience stood. Emma felt her heart tighten, not with pain, but with gratitude. After the concert, Lily tugged at her hand. "Auntie Emma," she asked, "can music really save people?" Emma looked at Michael, then at Lily. "Yes," she said, "if someone is brave enough to play it." The lights slowly dimmed, the hall emptied. But inside them, something had been lit, not bright, but enduring. And this time, music was no longer a painful memory. It was the way home. Spring arrived in New York, quietly. It came with gentler sunlight in the mornings, with cherry blossoms drifting slowly through the parks, with the way the city nudged people outside to breathe deeply, as if everything, at last, allowed itself to feel lighter. That afternoon, Michael Reed and Emma Lawson sat on an old wooden bench in Riverside Park. No bodyguards, no packed schedules, only the sound of children laughing and the wind moving through the trees. Lily ran ahead, chasing small yellow butterflies. Each time she missed one, she laughed out loud, a laugh carrying no painful memories at all. Michael watched his daughter, then turned to Emma. "There were times I thought everything was too late," he said, "that what we lose can never truly be recovered." Emma rested her head against his shoulder. "I thought so too," she replied, "until I realized some things don't need to start over. They need to continue." Michael was silent. He laced his fingers through hers. They didn't talk about a distant future. They made no grand promises. Both had learned that the loudest vows are sometimes the most fragile. "I've been thinking about Northern Lights," Emma said after a moment. "That song, it used to have an ending, but now it feels like it's still being written." Michael smiled. "Maybe," he said, "the best promises aren't the ones we make once and store away, but the ones we repeat every day, through tiny actions." Emma turned to look at him. Her blue eyes were no longer cold, but softer, deeper. "Then," she said, "promise me just one thing. Not forever. Just for today." Michael nodded. "Promise me you'll keep playing, even when your hand still hurts. Promise me you'll keep teaching Lily, not just music, but how not to give up. And promise me that you'll allow yourself to be happy, even if it scares you. Michael didn't answer right away. He looked at Lily running back toward them, a cherry blossom caught in her hair. Then he looked at Emma. "I promise," he said. And this time, there was nothing in him that doubted it. Lily climbed up to sit between them. "Daddy, Auntie Emma," she said, breathless. "There's a guy over there playing piano outside. He plays really well. But not as well as you, Daddy." Michael laughed. "Shall we go listen?" he asked. Emma stood first, holding out her hand to him. But first, she leaned in and kissed him. A gentle kiss, unhurried, unhidden, carrying the scent of coffee, spring air, and an unspoken promise. "When I'm sad," she whispered, "I'll remember that there was someone who wrote a song for me, even when he didn't have to." Michael looked at her, his eyes shining. "And when I'm afraid," he replied, "I'll remember that there was someone who dared to choose the truth when she could have chosen what was easier." They walked toward the fountain. The pianist was a young man about 19, his fingers still awkward, his rhythm uneven. When he stopped and looked up anxiously, Michael clapped first. "That was good," he said. "Keep playing, even when people say you're not good enough, especially when they say that." The young man nodded, his eyes lighting up, and began to play again, this time with a little more confidence. Emma slipped her arm around Michael's waist. Lily climbed onto her lap. The three of them sat there, listening to the music, imperfect, but honest. Cherry blossoms fell around them like a gentle rain. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep with her familiar teddy bear, Michael returned to the piano in Emma's apartment. She had bought it for him 3 months earlier. Each time he saw it, his throat still tightened. "Play me something new," Emma said, resting her head on his shoulder. "A piece just for us." Michael placed his hands on the keys. The melody began very slowly, like a shy conversation between two people unfamiliar with happiness. There were missteps, there were long silences. But gradually, everything found its way. When the piece ended, Emma was crying. "What's it called?" she asked. Michael thought for a moment. "Second movement," he said, "because every piece has more than one part. And we are only just beginning." Emma kissed him, slowly and deeply. "Promise we'll keep writing this music," she whispered, "no matter what happens." Michael nodded. "I promise." This time, there were no secrets, no ghosts of the past. Only two people who had walked through loss, brave enough to choose each other. Not because it was easy, but because some songs are too essential to be forgotten. And in that warm, golden light, the music rose again. Music is not only meant to be heard, but to heal. Some stories do not end with a big embrace. No fireworks, no vows proclaimed before a crowd. They end very quietly, like a peaceful evening, when everything is finally set back in its rightful place. That night, New York was still noisy outside. The distant sound of traffic. The wind moves through rows of tall buildings. But inside a small apartment bathed in warm yellow light, Michael sat at the piano. Emma rested her head on his shoulder. Lily slept soundly in the next room, hugging her worn teddy bear. There was no past weighing them down, no future left to prove. Only the present, complete in the simplest possible way. Michael placed his hands on the keys, then stopped. "I used to think," he said softly, "that some parts of life, once lost, could never be recovered." Emma didn't answer right away. She tightened her grip on his hand a little. "I used to think," she said after a moment, "that I had to be strong enough to need no one. But it turns out The strongest thing is daring to stay. Michael smiled, a smile without hesitation. He began to play. Not Northern Lights, not a piece of memory or loss, but a new melody, slow, warm, with passages that weren't fully formed, yet not rushed to be fixed, just like their lives now. Somewhere in this city there are likely still many people living in silence, people who once had dreams but folded them away after a single turning point, people who once loved but after loss no longer dared to open their hearts, people who are passed over every day because they don't stand in the right place, don't wear the right clothes, don't speak in the voice society expects. Michael's story is not a miracle. He did not become a star overnight. There was no shortcut. He chose not to abandon himself again. Emma did not become someone else either. She is still strong, still decisive, different in only one way. She no longer uses power to hide fear, but to protect what is right. And Lily, the child who unknowingly became the anchor for two once broken adults, grows up in a world where music is not meant for success, but to stay with people when they need it most. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Daddy, what if I'm not good at piano when I grow up?" Michael looked at her and answered, "Then you still play. Because music doesn't ask whether you're good or not. It only asks whether you're sincere." Emma heard those words. She turned away, hiding a tearful smile. Because that, too, was the answer to many questions in life. There are songs that are not born to be famous. They are born to keep a person connected to the world. And sometimes, what heals us is not being seen, but no longer having to hide. When the music ended, Michael didn't close the piano lid right away. He left the keys exposed, as a reminder that music will continue as long as people still dare to live honestly. Emma stood up and turned off the light. The room settled into a gentle glow. Outside, the city remained unchanged. Life was still hard. The world is still full of injustice. But somewhere, a song had been played again, and a person had been kept from disappearing. If you're watching this story and feel your heart slow for a moment, if you've ever been overlooked, ever had a dream folded away because life was too harsh, perhaps this story was told to you. This is Deep Life Tales, where small stories touch big truths, where we remind one another that a person's value is not where they stand, but what they manage to keep alive inside. If this story made you think of someone, please share it. If there's something you want to say, leave a comment. We always read them. And if you believe that kind stories are still worth telling, please like and subscribe to Walk with Deep Life Tales in the stories to come. Because some songs are far too essential to be forgotten.